Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
Welcome back to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler. Lots of stuff to get to, so let's get cracking. Lawmaking in Nevada is closing up at a frenzied pace as we enter the summer months. Congrats to the Vegas Golden Knights hockey team for making the Stanley Cup Finals. This is epic. Congrats, guys. Looking forward to a great series with Florida. Fired up like I was that first season in 2017-18. Congratulations. Now, it's important to not drift too far from the important stuff in life. Keep things balanced, I always say. You always need time for good old-fashioned R&R, but we need to stay vigilant. I can't help but feel like, and I know some of you listeners can relate, like I'm on guard on the night watch. And that's okay. As a side note, quick shout out to Pastor John Jimenez from U-Turn for Christ. The ministry has church services on Homestead near Dandelion every Friday night, 7 p.m. Just got back from there, and boy, I think I needed that, the dose of truth, of encouragement, of balance, and to just keep me focused on the important things of life, the important things of eternity, doing good while we're here. So thank you again, Pastor John Jimenez. I know you sometimes tell me that I'm an encouragement to you, but definitely you are an encouragement and a blessing to me and my family. So again, I know it's okay to take on a little stress and vigilance if it can help others relax. And that's kind of a role that I think I've always kind of had. I'm a firm believer in that. I know that when I lived a more basic life without worrying too much about weighty things in politics and in faith, I thought I was content, but I really wasn't. I'm thinking back to my late 20s or so. I wish I was content, but I always had a sort of undercurrent of anxiety. Looking back on it, I think it's anxiety for a good reason, though. If we're too passive culturally, politically, spiritually, we will drift so far out, we won't see the shore anymore. I'm confident in that. And I think I speak for a lot of you when I say we're tired of the crap. We're tired of taking blows below the belt. We're tired of capitulating. We're sick of this cultural drift toward anarchy and lawlessness. I know you all can see it. I myself am also tired of seeing our culture tell us what is good is evil and what's evil is good. I'm done with it. So I really don't care who gets chapped about anything I say any longer. I don't care about tickling ears or making nice with everyone for the sake of just being nice. So today on the show of the Nevada Patriot Podcast, today we're talking about a major change within our Nye County School District. Side note, I'm thankful for the change. I think it's a good change. Going to also hit on a few constitutional amendments that passed the first of, 3 different hurdles they're going to have to pass. So this legislative cycle, again in 2 years, and then again 2 years after that. These amendments, I mean, if you chopped it up, I guess good versus bad, I guess you could say that one could be a good amendment and one definitely bad, in my opinion. We're also going to touch on a few Senate bills that dropped for discussion in May that includes hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. We'll get into that and why I don't think that's an awesome idea. So a few terrible election bills have also cleared major hurdles and likely await the governor soon. Maybe by the time you hear this podcast on the radio or on Rumble or YouTube, we may already know how the governor reacted to these bills. So we'll talk about the mixed bag. We'll call it a mixed bag known as the governorship here in Nevada. And maybe a little rating system, a little grade, progress report of how our Governor Joe Lombardo is doing. And then hopefully we'll have a little time to talk about everyone's favorite 5-letter word, Trump. So let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. So touching now on the first issue that we were going to talk about, the school board. And it's not so much the school board, but I guess the school district, the superintendent, basically. The school board did have a direct effect on the change. So rewinding back to December 14th, there was a closed session meeting, which was found to be, I guess, at best, kind of an unethical thing. At worst, could have been something that was not legal. So back in December 14th, and mind you, this is before a couple different school board members were set to take office, newly elected school board members. They rushed this meeting, in my opinion, December 14th. We had 2 school board members that had yet to be seated, until the new year. So they rushed this kind of in December at the 11th hour in a closed session meeting, and they voted to approve a school board contract to our Superintendent, Warren Schillenberg, that would extend all the way to June of 2026. The big kicker that I saw also in this was they voted to approve a raise from a salary of $150,000 per year to $180,000 per year to take effect in July of 2024. So that would have been, 13 months from now. A 20% raise. Now, I know Biden inflation has been a real thing. It's been hitting us since the COVID response, right? It's been on warp drive. 20% though on a rate. How many of you workers, can I ask, whoever's listening, whatever job you do, when's the last time you got a 20% raise? I mean, most people are lucky to see any raise, 2%, 3%, maybe every other year you get some kind of cost of living adjustment, 1.5, 2%, not enough to even keep up with inflation, yet they were voting this guy, closed session meeting, a 20% raise, $30,000 a year. And again, like I said, 2 new members had been elected, but just not seated yet. So they voted at the recommendation, I guess, of the DA's office to let them know that it didn't appear to be an up-and-up meeting that should have been talking about those things or negotiating those things in a closed session in December of 2022. So the school board went ahead and voted to go ahead and revoke the terms of that contract. So it looks like in June here, which is where we're at, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like Warren Schillenberg, will be finishing up his term. So here's my way of thinking. You've heard the analogy on the show before, and I'm sure you've heard it in the media or other podcasts or other TV shows or radio shows, that if a coach is having a losing season after season, not getting the job done, how in the heck do they keep their job, let alone get a raise? A coach doesn't perform with his team, they have a losing season, they get fired. How this person was able to convince, or how people were able to convince themselves that he was worthy of a 20% raise, for us having probably, at least on the metrics, on the testing, on the what you can kind of measure, which is, it's dubious at best if it actually measures the true performance or the true intelligence or the true aptitude of our students here in Nye County, but puts us at almost the worst in our own state. And we're in a state where we're near the worst performing in the country. And that doesn't necessarily equate to because we're the poorest. We don't necessarily throw a lot less money per pupil, per student than other states. And I said it before, Utah spends a lot less per student with their school budget statewide, on the state level, than we do. Yet they perform exponentially better in all the metrics than our students do. So I always say it's not a money issue. There's other issues at play. There's other factors at play that are obviously inhibiting our students. Nonetheless, when you are presiding as a superintendent over a school district that is underperforming month after month, year after year, you got to go. plain as day. I don't know this person, Warren, personally. If you're listening, I have no animosity against you. But when you can't do the job, when you're doing it poorly, when I'm hearing about some of the, I guess, quote unquote, woke ideology that's being perpetuated in some of our schools here, I think you presided over a term where we were caught sleeping at the wheel, I guess. Just got infiltrated by liberal ideology in our rural school district, which our whole county, you can't consider anything really urban in our whole county when Pahrump is the biggest town with only tens of thousands of people. Even though we have thousands of students, nothing compared to, the Clark County School District, which is, I think, one of the 4 or 5 biggest school districts in the country. We're doing a lot more poorly, if that's the term, or if my English. See, I'm a product of the public school system, more poorly. We're doing worse than a lot of the students in Clark County. That should tell you a lot. Again, I'm a homeschool parent. Won't say that we do things perfectly, but if anyone's going to screw up my kids, it's going to be me, not some liberal institution that's under the supervision of a failing superintendent. That's not going to happen, not on my watch. So that's that. We're going to move on now to talk about some constitutional changes that were happening in our state. So recently, there was these joint resolutions. I talked about these on a prior show or two. So what happens is an Assembly joint resolution or a Senate joint resolution can come about, be voted on in each chamber. Our state assembly and our state senators can vote, and if it passes by a majority in each chamber, it can move on and be voted on again at the next legislative session, which happens in 2 years. And if it passes there, it's going to then go in the next session 2 years after that as a ballot question, a yes or no ballot question. If it passes yes by a majority vote at that point, our Constitution is changed. And like I mentioned many times before, once the Constitution is changed, you cannot unchange it very easily. One exception I guess I want to make is going to be one of the joint resolutions I'm talking about that I don't actually have that big of a problem with, because what it's basically doing is it's negating something that I feel was in our Constitution, and it was kind of unnecessary at the time in my estimation, and surely is now outdated, antiquated, unnecessary. And we'll start getting into those right now. The first one, I want to do the bad news first so that we can hopefully have better news on the other possible change to our Constitution. We'll talk about SJR 7, Senate Joint Resolution 7. Basically, it's abortion being allowed on demand, pretty much with no repercussions, all the way up, pretty much the way I read it, all the way until birth, right? So that's going to be passing this first hurdle in this legislative session. By the way, the governor has no mechanism by which he can veto this. So even if he despises this, there's nothing he can do, because it's just a resolution that passes both houses. It doesn't need the governor's approval. It just has to do the same exact process again in 2 years, and then again 2 years after that to a vote of the people, and it will change the Constitution. So they've checked off the box. 1 of 3 is now checked. So they just need 2 more check boxes, and that would be embedded in our Constitution. Can you imagine codified in our law, in our Constitution of Nevada, basically abortion on demand? And that sailed through the Assembly and through the Senate, largely in a partisan way. So I think all the Republicans in both chambers did vote against it. All the Democrats voted for it. So that is going to be a topic for both chambers again in the 2025 session, 2025, so 2 years from now. Now we're going to get to the other one, Assembly Joint Resolution 5, AJR 5, regarding the lottery. Now, many folks think that the casinos had something to do with the lottery being prohibited, when in reality, a lottery was always prohibited from the nexus of our Constitution. It was kind of an original area that was not allowed to be in our Constitution when we became a state. Back then, lotteries, I guess, were mismanaged, full of corruption, full of ins and outs for the powers that be to take advantage of folks. So it was pretty much from the get-go not legal in Nevada by virtue of just that's how the Constitution was drafted. So with that being said, I believe that provision has probably been antiquated now for 100 years. It's just that the casino powers and the powers that be in the gaming industry have traditionally battled that idea of having the lottery here in Nevada as some kind of competition to the gaming industry, to that would be siphoning money away from table games, slot machines. To a point, I kind of see where they're coming from. But look at modern day Las Vegas right now, for instance, when it comes to the shows, when it comes to legalized sports gaming, when it comes to just paid parking at all these garages for all these resorts. You're putting $20 into a parking spot. That's $20 less that someone's going to put on the craps table, right? I mean, so there's all these things competing for your money. There's buffets, there's shows, there's sports like hockey, like we talked about the Golden Knights games. Does that not compete with gaming revenue? Yet they seem to welcome it with open arms. So I think there's a way that casinos will benefit from being able to sell lottery tickets. Other businesses able to sell lottery tickets. Now I know it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison, but only proportionally you can do the math and you still see that it benefits us. California, for instance, well over $1.3 billion, I guess, is generated from their lottery system. Now I know it always doesn't go where it's supposed to go. I know it's earmarked for schools in many states like California, and they complain that they don't see it. But at the end of the day, more money going into our tax coffers is probably a good thing, because many people in Nevada go to Baker, they go to State Line, or they go to Shoshone, either head out of Pahrump to go one way or the other to go buy lottery tickets, sometimes waiting in line for a few hours even to buy tickets, and basically that benefits a different state's economy. So why not get those same folks to spend that same money here in Nevada? So whether it goes in a general fund, it's earmarked for education, goes toward traffic lights, whatever it goes to, law enforcement, schools, just think it's tax money that's there now for us to use. Now, if they're using, 1.2 or 3 billion, that still means, if you do the math, Nevada, the proportions, you're still talking over 150 million or more that we could generate here in our state with a lottery, and maybe even more, because that's taken into consideration of just our population, let alone the amount of Nevadans, and then we'll no longer need to put money into California. They'll keep it here. Maybe it'll be more than 150 million that we would generate in revenue. And that's a good thing, right? Because I don't see, somebody's aunt or uncle that goes and buys some scratch offs, 10, 20 bucks here, 30 bucks there. It's not going to take money away from a craps table at the Bellagio. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think there's room for that to exist. So I don't have a huge problem. And I know in previous shows, I'm like, warning, you hear constitutional change, ballot questions, vote no. Well, this might be one of those cases where when it does come around, because it looks like it's passed now through the Assembly and through the Senate this first time. So then it has to do the same exact thing in 2 years. And then 2 years after that, it goes to a public vote here in Nevada. I won't hate you if you vote for that. If you vote yes. It's something that I've always thought makes sense here in our state to have a lottery. So that one is coming up as well. So I guess one bad constitutional change and one at least neutral or good, if you want to call it that, constitutional change could be happening within about, I guess, 4 years now. If it passes the House or the Assembly and the Senate in 2 years, and then passes by vote of the people 2 years after that, that will be the Constitution. So now we're moving along to a couple more bills that I want you to keep an eye out. Maybe both eyes. Keep both eyes out on some of these bills that have dropped in the past month. One of them, I think, even in the past week and a half maybe or so. The first one I'll talk about is one that came about, I think it was May 11th, so about 3-4 weeks ago. SB 496. Now it's the motion pitcher tax credit bill. So if you've been paying attention to the news, you see that it looks like there's an effort to have studio infrastructure and industry to be brought here into the, I guess mainly the Vegas area right now, as far as I can see. So near Summerlin, they're looking to offering millions upon millions of dollars in tax credits so that, Hollywood can relocate here and start industry. And it's always sold with the same thing. It means jobs for the community. It means, to me, it means picking winners and losers. I believe when you have a free state, when you have a good economic climate, like you would see in places like Texas and places like that, when you have an overall assemblage of fairness in all these different communities, I think that's what brings industry. I remember when that hockey team was getting brought to Las Vegas, or the thought of expansion. Of course, the powers that be were considering a public option to help finance a stadium. I think we held out. Public funding was not going to be an option. So what happened? Well, the demand was there. The opportunity was there. Private industry kicked in, whether it was the casinos and private money to build T-Mobile Arena, because the major beneficiaries of that, well, obviously, having a pro team is good for the morale of Southern Nevadans like me. I'm born and raised in Las Vegas, for instance, before I moved to Pahrump. So I always wanted a pro team to cheer on. Yeah, I'm a sports fan. I was an athlete. I was a rabid sports fan when it came to basketball, soccer, hockey. So I thought it was a fantastic thing, and it was the best of both worlds because the private sector kicked in, got this thing financed, built, and now it's been a win-win situation for everyone involved. The government didn't have to come in and decide they're going to butter up one industry over another, and it's been a success. And I think the same route should have probably been taken with the football team. Now, I can honestly take or leave the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that doesn't make me popular with some of my own friends and family members, but so what? I stopped watching football basically, 5-6 years ago, the kneeling fiascos, and it's gotten nauseating. The Raiders happen to be one of my least favorite teams to begin with anyway, so it made me even have less interest in that team. So the thought of tax revenue having to go up and room tax rates going up in order to subsidize the building of that facility, and you can always chalk it up to the powers that be say, it's actually tourist money that's happening. We're taxing the tourists for extra room tax. It's not going to affect the Nevadans. Trust me, when you tax in a tourist town, in a tourist area like Nevada, Southern Nevada, the more you tax tourists, the less money they're going to have to spend on other things, other people's small businesses. Maybe the pizza shop on Las Vegas Boulevard doesn't sell extra pizza slices because you gouge the tourists on room tax. That's dumb. That's a dumb train of logic. You can't tax your way into having a prosperous community. It's an impossibility. But yet we're always sold on it. It's like a carrot getting dangled in front of us. Oh, the Las Vegas Raiders, look at this mock-up of this pretty stadium with the purple lights and the retractable ceiling, and oh, how beautiful it is, and it's going to be great for tourism and all this stuff. And we buy it. We bite the carrot. Same thing's happening with SB 509 now. So that's the other one that just dropped toward the end of May. I don't know, 25th or 26th, I think. Senate Bill 509. It's a stadium funding bill. And it's kind of funny, they drop these things, and it's not like it's a 2-page document. It's 43 flipping pages toward the end of the legislative session. Now, I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but, we only meet every 2 years in the legislature. This is coming in at the end of May. They're supposed to be adjourned and ready to wrap all the stuff up relatively at the beginning of this month of June. Yet here we are. It's going to be another reason to probably call a special session if they can't get it done here at the beginning of this month. But something tells me, instead of calling the bluff of these billionaire ownership groups, want my opinion? I'd be like, okay, Oakland, how about you have no more leverage? We're not going to give you $1 at all. If you want to move here, move here. Their fan base already hates them in Oakland. Even if they go back now, I don't think they're going to have the loyalty of the fans back. They already feel burned. Where else are they going to go? I say just when you got leverage on someone, like maybe our city has leverage on the Oakland A's right now, the ownership group, call their bluff. But that's not going to happen. That's not how politics works. No one can curry favor or make deals or be owed favors by something like that happening. So you'll see it happen, right? You'll see hundreds of millions of dollars in tax credits and stuff get thrown and dangled out there for the owners of the ownership group of the A's, and they'll come and they'll take it, and we'll act like it was a great move and it was a great investment in our state when it's not, because I think we could have called the bluff. And I think our governor is going to capitulate and sign an agreement on both of these bills. And I just don't think that's how good, organic, healthy growth happens when government gets in there and starts picking winners and losers and who gets subsidies and who doesn't, who gets a hand up and who doesn't. And I think it's just it goes against the raw nature that I enjoy in capitalism, supply and demand, the freedom of the individual to choose, just the dynamics that don't involve corporate welfare. I enjoy that. I enjoy that aspect of economics, and I think that's the only fair way to do it. That's kind of what the essence of the American dream is, right? That the little guy can come in and based upon a set of laws and regulations that's equal to everyone, everybody's treated with relative equality under the law in almost every instance. No one can really control where they're born or if their mom and dad are rich or if their mom and dad are poor. You don't control certain factors, I get it, but overall, there's a sense of a level playing field in our nation's founding. And some people are born to more privilege than others. I don't deny that. That's a reality. But relatively speaking, our ability to move upward on this whole, there's almost no limit to how high an average person can grow in this economy. Their business can explode. They can become thousandaires to billionaires, and that's the only country on earth that can ever do that. And the more I look at it, the more I see that we're kind of turning away from that. There's going to be glass ceilings now for so many different people. We're running up on needing to take a break here, so we're going to be back here in just a minute or two to talk about some more stuff. We're going to talk about some more bills being considered, a little more elaboration on Governor Lombardo, and if we have time, a little bit about Trump and his latest challenger. So stick around. Hey, it's Matt Sadler with the Nevada Patriot Podcast. You can catch my show right here on 97.7 FM every Saturday at 6 p.m. with encore episodes again on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. In fact, tune in at 6 p.m. each night to 97.7 FM for entertaining and informative shows brought to you by different hosts with different points of view and different perspectives. This is KPFF 97.7 FM, where the First Amendment lives. God bless. We're back. Thank you for staying with us. See, that was painless. Now we're going to talk about a couple bills that are making their way through toward the governor right now, one of which I'm a little bit disappointed in the people that share my political party, the Republicans. There's a few of you that are going to hopefully call out your names on this show, so don't take offense to it. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Basic stuff in school that we used to learn, so got to deal with it, folks, okay? So AB 242, that's Assembly Bill 242. AB 242 was a bill originated out of the Assembly. When it went to the Senate, sad to say, 3 of our senators on the Republican side have capitulated and have now voted yes on this. So it's given them basically a veto-proof majority now, so that even if the governor were to veto this, if the numbers stayed the same, they could override that veto, thanks in part to some state senators. So AB 242 was talked about on a prior episode a month or two back, I think, on the Nevada Patriot podcast. I highlighted some of these bills, actually both these. The first one, AB 242, which was going to basically eviscerate any county's ability or any county clerk's ability to implement hand counting of ballots, in essence forcing them to use voting machines and not hand counts, forcing county clerks to use only electronic tabulators and not hand counts, which we kind of did a hybrid thing recently. We did a lot of hand counting of ballots or paper ballots basically, but then putting them in a tabulator machine to tabulate the results from the ballots. So I think that gave us an air of confidence that our vote was counting, and not just putting our votes, all of them, into machines that are hooked up on networks. Because we talked about it on a different show. If you're on some type of network, there are vulnerabilities. I promise you there's vulnerabilities. Not like I'm a high-tech hacker, but believe me, people much smarter than me are out there trying to do harm to our electoral process, doing harm to our intelligence agencies, doing harm to the Department of Defense out here in our country, people in different countries that despise us, and then also the people from within who are looking to subvert our elections as well. AB 242 was going to basically give all the power and codify voting machines and electronic tabulators into the only way that any county can do elections. And that goes for Esmeralda County that only has hundreds of voters. They're going to have to do it all by machines if this passes. Could be unintended consequences to that. It doesn't seem like it's very difficult for small counties to do hand counts. And even if they put them in tabulators, or some counties are so small that shouldn't be a problem to hand count them and triple check it, and all the different quality control that you can do to have a fair and equitable, reliable election result. So AB 242 goes against that. Carrie Buck, who's a Republican, voted for it. Heidi Severs-Gansert, who we highlighted on our last show, voted for this as well. And so did the senator that represents us here in Pahrump, Nevada, Pete Goycochea, voted in favor of that. I would say, hey, somebody should primary Pete Goycochea for such a terrible vote, but looks like he's termed out and he won't be running again. So I guess we see his true colors shining through. Thanks, Pete. I guess you're going out in a blaze of glory here. So he voted for that as well. In the assembly, though, the other house, the lower house, doesn't look like any of the 14 Republican assembly members voted for that. So thank you for holding the line and at least doing your job and representing, I think, the interests of at least rural Nevada. And I will say most of the people in Clark County that I know that are even-minded and well-minded and fair thinkers, whether they're Democrats, nonpartisans, Republicans, whatever, I think almost all of them would have voted no on this. But hey, sometimes you just elect someone based upon the D next to their name, even if they don't reflect any of your values on how they vote in the legislation they craft. It's just, that's how tribal we are. We blindly will vote for Democrats if we're Democrats, I guess, just no matter what they do, no matter how Marxist they get, no matter how controlling they get, no matter how 1940s Russia they're trying to make our country, we'll vote for them because somehow everybody's hooked on the lie that the party switched and the Republicans are racist and the blah blah, even though the party was literally founded to end slavery. Main thing on their agenda, end slavery. That's crazy. It's like it's a steakhouse. The steakhouse is there to serve steak. The Republicans were there to end slavery, right? That's the brand. They didn't switch. Republicans didn't switch into Democrats. Democrats didn't convert into Republicans. It's a lie. So anyway, now that AB 246, which is going to be, a relative of AB 242. What that does is it imposes all these other restrictions. County clerks have to provide websites and toll-free numbers to help people, who might not be competent enough in English to understand things, to have extra steps and extra, it gives the Secretary of State in the state of Nevada micromanagement authority to micromanage the crap out of all of our local county clerks. So it basically is subverting power and authority. Instead of advising clerks, hey, this might be a best practice, this might be a good thing. What it does is it compels our county clerks to do certain things. It mandates them to do certain things. Do you see this problem with the Democrats in the bills that they back up? Even our Secretary of State, Cisco Aguilar, all these processes that they back up, what they're doing is they're consolidating centralized power and authority at the very, 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 very top, and then wielding it like a hammer and knocking us all on the head. Instead of giving counties who might have different values, different needs, different methods, different tactics that are particular to them, that work for their community, and it's making it a one-size-fits-all thing without any kind of regard for how much money this is going to cost counties like Nye, like ours, or Esmeralda, or Mineral, or some of the smaller counties, Lincoln County. It's going to probably be a very burdensome thing on their county clerks. I know this is one of the bills that I believe our clerk, Mark Kampf, was not a fan of. I think he spoke out against both of these bills. At least AB 246, the one I'm talking about now, didn't appear to have any Republican support, at least. So it looks like everybody kind of held the line so far. It's 28-14 is the voting in the assembly, because they have a supermajority there. And the Senate has not actually voted yet on it, but you can pretty much count on the fact that they'll probably vote either along party lines, or we'll have a couple of these names that I named before, the Bucks or the Goycocheas or the Ganserts, that go ahead and decide to cozy up to the Dems. Let's hope not, though. And this kind of puts it back on Governor Lombardo's shoulders. Now, I hope even if he sees that he could possibly get one of his vetoes overridden, I hope he makes a statement, even on some of these bills where it looks like they have a veto-proof majority to override his veto. I hope he holds the line and vetoes it. That will tell me a lot about his character. Hope those bills get vetoed. As a side note, big thank you to Governor Lombardo for doing the right thing on some of these anti-Second Amendment bills that were brought in there that would have had extra checks on firearm ownership, such as restricting adults that were between the ages of 18 and not quite 21 from having the ability to have semi-automatic rifles or shotguns. Again, it's an attempt to eviscerate and wear down and siege the Second Amendment. He held the line there on, I think, 3 different bills that he vetoed. Thank you for doing that, Governor Lombardo. So what I call his tenure so far would be kind of a mixed bag. So mixed results so far. So in a nutshell, I guess I could say that he's focusing on dumping more money into education. I hate to say that, but sometimes you can have a good cause, and just because you open up your wallet and you start throwing money at it, and by the way, it's not Lombardo's money. It's not the Senate Republicans' money. It's not the Senate Democrats' money or the Assembly Democrats' money. It's our money, Nevadans' hard-earned taxpayer dollars. It just seems like he's willing to just throw that into education, where I think the teachers' unions are going to rejoice. I bet our scores are still somewhere in the sewer, whether or not they throw the extra $2,500 per pupil or not. As a homeschool parent, sure wish I even got $2,500 per student, let alone, now it's going to go up to, what do we give our kids? It's roughly and I can't say we give our kids that, because it's not like the kids see $13,000 per year worth of benefit from our tax dollars. They count them per pupil, but it's going to administrative costs, going to, dopey expenditures in each of these schools, unnecessary positions. Teachers unions lap it up, though, because the more money in the coffers, the better for them. And I'm not saying teachers unions are all, the members in the teachers unions are all bad, but something's broken there. I can tell you that. It's not running on all cylinders, so throwing more money at them is not going to make it all better. Seems like he's also focused more on wooing an MLB sports team than he is on common sense Nevada proposals. And I'll get into more of stuff, why I believe that, like some of the bills that he signed that I think are bad, and not that I think are bad, that I know are bad. But again, thank you for the Second Amendment. At least you're sticking up for that. So he signed SB 172 into law, and I think that was a disgraceful piece of legislation. I'd mentioned one of our Republican senators actually backed that, so that effectively created a supermajority in favor of that in both chambers. Because all it takes is one Republican to kind of hop on over there with the Democrats, and then it almost doesn't even matter if the governor vetoes it, because they can probably then turn around and override it because they have 2/3 majorities then that can override the veto. But he should have done it, if nothing else, than just to dig his heel in and say, no, I'm not going to be okay with this unless he is okay with it. And what that does is, again, that basically allows a minor to consent to have birth control and IUDs, or like intrauterine devices, like birth control devices, without their parents' consent. I would imagine the sex traffickers of the world would be rejoicing on that, right? Because if they can get control of our 14-year-olds, of our 15-year-olds, and allow them to do these things, or put it in their mind that, oh, you need to get on birth control, or you need to do this, so that I can put you to work, and we don't have to tell your parents. It's a way of taking arrows out of a quiver when the parents are already bombarded by the culture, by the media, by all these forces of evil that are out there trying to destroy not only your relationship with your child, but to destroy your family, destroy your child, at the expense of someone else's pleasure, or whatever you want to call it, a leftist agenda. At the very least, a leftist agenda. We're to sacrifice our children, and this is another method that legally they're going to be able to bypass your God-given authority and rights as a parent over your minor child, and keep you in the dark in this. I think it's going to lead to probably an explosion of sexual assaults, of sex crimes against our children, and that was signed into law by our governor. And then another bill that he signed that I really, really disagree with was the SB 131, Senate Bill 131. I think it's going to make us, this one will probably make us an abortion destination, sanctuary, whatever you want to call it. Because what it does, in essence, is for the sake of reproductive health and rights and all this kind of stuff, because now all this reproductive health rights, they just keep changing the words around, the language, to make it sound like it's a good thing, right? So say there's a state, something's illegal in a different state, like Arkansas or Tennessee. Somebody's committed a felony. Maybe their law says it's illegal to have an abortion before 24 weeks, and a doctor provides an abortion at 32 weeks. Their state finds out, issues a warrant for the person. He goes on the run. He's a fugitive from the law. He decides to hide out in Nevada because now we've signed SB 131, which makes it illegal for our authorities to cooperate with other authorities when it comes to matters of reproductive health. So he can say, under the guise of, the protections that SB 131 offers, because they can afford lawyers probably, right? If you're an abortion doctor, I'm sure you can afford a good lawyer that can look at this law and lobby for you and say, well, under this law, though, you're not bound to cooperate with another state. This is about reproductive rights or reproductive health, and it's codified now in the Nevada law. So you have to allow my client to have refuge here. So it's going to be like a destination for these types of people. When you combine that with the impending, SJR, which is abortion, SJR 7, which if it passes in 2 more years, like we talked about, and then the people vote on it and vote yes on it, it will basically allow abortion on demand up until 9 months. So we will definitely become the abortion capital of the world. What a feather in the cap to have in the state of Nevada, the state that I grew up in, the state that I love. And this is what we're doing. This is what we hire our legislators to go do. This is what we elect our governor to go do. This is, when I was campaigning myself, make sure you vote for Joe Lombardo. These are things that I told people to vote for Joe Lombardo. Well, let me ask you, how motivated are people like me? And I know all my listeners aren't as pro-life as I am, but there's a lot more of me out there than you think. They're just not like me. They don't talk about these things in mixed company. Whereas I'm like, to heck with it. I'm too old to worry about it, anymore. I've come too close with the things of eternity and the end of life or whatever to not realize that life is fickle. It's fleeting. It's only here for a moment. And if you're not going to sit here and take a stand or have convictions about the things that matter, what are we doing? Are we only here to talk about sports and the weather? No, it's time to take a stand. And taking a stand for the people who can't stand for themselves, which are the tiniest vulnerable humans. And like I said on a prior show, the safest place in the world for an unborn child should be the womb of his or her mother. And we're allowing it, not only allowing that safe place to become a death chamber, an execution chamber, we're encouraging it. And we're encouraging people to come to our state to perform those things here. It's maddening. It's sickening to me. And I believe ultimately, and I know many of you don't believe in a higher power. I believe in the God of the Bible. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe every word of Scripture is God-breathed, is true. It's useful for reproof, for correction, and for all good works. And this is antithetical to all of that. And you got to think that if the God of the universe is all-powerful, is all-knowing, is all-just, you have to think there's consequences for unjust actions willfully taken by our legislators, by the voters in our state, and just by the people that are indifferent to it. I just think many of you might not just see the gravity of it. Maybe a lot of you are dealing with guilt. Look, we've all known people or been complicit or we've been advocates of these procedures for our loved ones, our family members before. But here's a problem. I'm not looking to sit there and let you off the hook for that. I'm not looking to let myself off the hook for that. Were there times in my life when I probably should have spoken up as a younger man? Was I more pro-life than most of my friends? Absolutely. Was I as big of an advocate for the unborn or speaking up back then as I am now? No. Was there probably opportunities where I could have spoken to a few different people and convinced them to do something else than have an abortion? Yeah, there is. Will I be judged for that one day? Probably. But there's levels to this, right? So as a Christian, your soul, your destination is sealed, you're in Christ. You know where you're going. I don't want to swing into eternity being willfully disobedient. So, I confess those things, and I have confessed those things to my God. And I just hope that people will turn to what's true and what's right. Because I think deep down, even if you are a supporter of abortion, you have to know there's a part of your conscience that tells you, it's not right. It might be more convenient. It might help a child that not so-called quote unquote ruin their life by one bad indiscretion, and now they can't go to college, or now they can't join the military, or now they can't do this or they can't do that. But just understand that little inkling inside of you, your conscience. We know whether you hate God or whether you love God, whether you don't believe in God, we're all born with a conscience, and we know what's right and wrong. We can bury our head in the sand. We can become science deniers and not believe that life is happening at conception, but all the science points to it. Human life begins at conception, guys. My side is always told that we got to look at the science, right? The climate science, look at the global warming, look at this, look at that, look at the science for billions of years of existence and not a young earth and all this other stuff. But when it comes to the issue of abortion, for some reason or another, they don't want to look at the science, right? So now I guess we do have a few more minutes left. We're going to talk about, actually my rating then. I don't know if you're interested in how I'm rating the governor's performance on balance. I think I would probably rate him at around a C+, as opposed to Sisolak, the last, oh my goodness, F-. I don't know how low. I remember being in English class in 11th grade, an English teacher, and it was an honors class. It was a tough, challenging class, and I know I wasn't trying my hardest. I did what I thought was an okay job on a term paper. She gave me I think a 12%, and we only had like 4 things the whole entire school year that were going to dictate, or at least, no, not the school year, the semester, that were going to dictate our entire grade. That was one of them. I had to get like an A+ on the other 3 projects just to pull, I think, a C+ in the class or something like that. So that's how I rate, Sisolak as an F- at a 12%, compared to Lombardo so far. You maybe give him a C+. I might actually go with a solid C now that I'm thinking about it. I couldn't really give him better than like a 75% if I was giving him a grade on his performance thus far, because although he's done some important things, there's still some stuff that he hasn't had a chance to have come across his desk yet, because there's going to be a mad dash here coming up in the next week or so of all these things coming across his desk. So I might have a vastly different grading scale next time. So I'll go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt, though. A C+. Let's see where we're at a week from now, though, and then again a week after that. Our show comes out roughly every week, so we'll have a sliding scale of Governor Lombardo's job so far. So our last topic that I was going to get to before we call it quits on our show today was going to be our favorite 5-letter word here, especially in rural Nevada, Trump, Trump, and his latest and probably his only legitimate competitor, Ron DeSantis. DeSantis has formally put his hat in the ring, and I think that's a good thing. And believe me, I think both of these guys, they exponentially better than what we've got now, right? For sure. I think Trump is, and actually I would put both these guys able to be the best presidents in the last 50 or 60 years, probably. You could put each of them probably right alongside Reagan. I look at DeSantis that way. Now I know a lot of the detractors, a lot of the Trump supporters, and I'm a Trump supporter, by the way, but I got to face the facts. I got to look at the reality of it. What DeSantis has been able to do in the state of Florida has been nothing short of revolutionary. Now, granted, you get a little pickup, little support when Trump throws his endorsement your way. It makes a huge difference, right? It does. Well, unless you're Adam Laxalt, it doesn't make that big of a difference. He still lost his Senate race here in Nevada, and other people have lost their races here in Nevada with the Trump support. So, it's still kind of up in the air as to how much that helps. I know it helps. It's not going to pull everybody across the finish line, though. So DeSantis would have been, I think, DeSantis with or without Trump's help. Might have taken another cycle longer before he got his stride, but he's taken basically a purple state, a state that could easily have probably had another Democrat governor relatively quickly, and made it a solidly red state. with good sound policy. Now people say, oh, he's a rhino, he's this, he's that. Really? He's talking about, okay, the most un-rhino thing I could think a guy can do is advocate, no abortions before 6 or 8 weeks, or I forgot exactly when it was. No rhino is even going to touch the word abortion or life. They don't. Most of them are cowards. That's why they're rhinos. So you can't call him a rhino because he's not. There's so much vitriol Trump is throwing his way. It's like I haven't seen him really hammer a guy that hard since Jeb Bush. But I assure you, especially as the debate season goes on and all this stuff goes on, he's going to find out he's not dealing with Jeb Bush. DeSantis is a different animal. You got to give the guy his props. He handles the media, maybe the one guy that handles the media at large better than Donald Trump. And the more the general public gets to kind of look at that, outside of the COVID world that we were in when he kind of really came into the forefront, we were still very guarded with the information that we were getting in national politics, and didn't realize that we were probably having our information screened a lot by Fox News and other outlets like that. Now that there's more media options out there, there's other conservative voices that do shows far bigger than this one. Look at Dan Bongino, look at Matt Walsh, you look at Tucker Carlson, wherever he lands again soon, hopefully sooner than later. You can hear these guys and their takes. A lot more power has shifted in the media. Things are going to be a lot different now. So the cream is going to rise to the top. The media won't be able to cap and decide and pick winners and losers and mute voices. I think the good ideas, the good PR moments, the good pithy sound bites are going to make it to the masses. And I think that's what Trump is being smart about it. He's going after him hard. He's trying to chop him off right at the kneecaps. He's trying to take him out early, and you can't really blame him for that. But there's some feathers in the cap that DeSantis has, as far as, for one thing, dealing with the COVID response. DeSantis handled it better than our President Trump did. I'm going to speak it true to you guys. I'm speaking raw and honest here. There's a lot that Trump screwed up. Trump had a major issue with personnel. I don't think he did a good job. I think having Dr. Birx and Anthony Fauci up on stage all the time with him for as long as he did, I was screaming in my living room during the COVID era, April of 2020, like, get this Fauci guy off the stage. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's contradicting everything that he says. Like, you can't, whether he was malevolent or whether he was just incompetent, either way, the dude had to get off the stage. What does Trump do? Does he take him out? No, the guy sticks around for month after month after month. And then again, one of his final acts as President Trump gives Fauci and Birx and some of these other jokers commendations. This is January of 2021. Still, and he gives these people a commendation when I think they did more harm to this country than any individuals could have ever done in the past 100 years. So I think, Trump, you got that wrong, buddy. DeSantis moved very quickly to reestablish normalcy in his state. In the beginning, it seemed like Trump liked him. He was an advocate of DeSantis, and now all of a sudden he's saying that he was a failure and a lot of people died on his watch and he was careless and stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about, Trump? No, that's not really how it happened. You can fault the guy for lots of things, his shaky campaign launch on Twitter, different things like that, but stick to the facts. Don't get into propaganda. And don't ride this wave of Operation Warp Speed and getting these vaccines out and pushing these vaccines on people. I think Trump was very slow to see that was a losing issue. Because I know we all know people that have been injured probably by these vaccines. I know there's a lot of regret. I talked to so many people who wish they hadn't gotten a vaccine. And so at the very least, Trump should not have been taking so many victory laps over his role in developing and getting that vaccine out to the masses, when I think on balance it's been an abject failure. with that being said, would I vote for Trump again? Absolutely. The guy has done so much in 4 years that to not having this past 3 years now, it's been tough. Like if we had had Trump up until now, everything would probably still be booming. He was great for this country, and I think there's probably stuff that he can get done that DeSantis, even if his ideas are better, maybe he's not as equipped to get them done. But I think as more people see DeSantis, they're going to see him as a much more viable opponent to Trump than they do now. But I think I believe that Trump sees it, and that's why he is so vicious toward Ron DeSantis. But I'm a firm believer in that the primary process, even though there's challenges to the primary opponent or the primary front runner, I think that's a good thing. I think it's going to refine the candidate that comes out of the primary, and I still think that candidate will be Donald Trump, but I think he's going to be a stronger candidate. He'll have a chance to refine his message. He'll go up against a far superior opponent than he would in the actual general election on the Democrat side. And if he can pass that primary against DeSantis, then I think he's going to be probably a shoo-in. I mean, ideal situation would be great if Trump could head up a ticket and DeSantis could run as vice president, but I don't know if that's a possibility now. That would be a ticket that would be hard to beat, to be honest with you. So I hope they can make amends somehow, and maybe the stars align and that can happen, because above all, I want what's good for the country, and I think that would be excellent for the country. I mean, he still hasn't fully apologized for picking Pence as his running mate, and I think we can all agree that guy turned out to be a real turncoat. Nikki Haley, these other people that he really backed, backstabbers, those are personnel things that he was in charge of where I think he got it wrong. With that said, though, I think Trump is still the guy. I think Trump can really do a lot in the next 4 years if he gets it. If he gets in there, and then that might pave the road for another person like Ron DeSantis to maybe carry it forward another 4 to 8 years. That would be the way to right this ship, to get this country back on track. And again, though, all glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Jesus, you are still holding us in the palm of your hands. But at the same time, we're here with a certain level of free will to kind of battle for good and try to make the country better. And that's what I think we all need to do. So I think we need to get off the sidelines and get into the mix as much as we can. Get informed. Don't become idolatrous. Don't get consumed. Don't become just crazy about it. Lose sleep. I don't want any of you having anxiety attacks about things, but just be productive. Be good stewards of your time. Get your rest. Be with your family. But don't forget that too much mindless recreation is going to tear us apart. So please be deliberate and be careful with your time. Budget your time for the things that matter. Your wives, preferably your relationship with God, then your wife or your husband, then your children, then your neighborhood, then your town, your city, your county, your state, your country, and the world. That's the order it goes. So let's keep our eyes on our priorities. So we're about out of time. I appreciate you staying by with us for close to an hour today. And on behalf of the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler, until next time, God bless you.
You've just spent some of the best minutes of your life hanging out with Matt Sadler at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.